Testing. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. A warm welcome to session 2 on the synergies between adaptation and disaster risk reduction. My name is Coco Ushiyama from the World Food Program. I have the distinguished honor to welcome our two panelists, Ms. Aisha Humera Chaudhry, Secretary of the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordinator, and also Mr. Mohammed Idrees Mahsud, Member of Disaster Risk Reduction from the National Disaster Management Authority. It would be a 30-minute session. I will start with some scene setter and then ask two questions to each to our panelists. So let me start on this session with the scene setting about Pakistan. When we really examine the climate reality confronting Pakistan and many countries like Pakistan, 4 urgent truths become clear. First, as we heard, climate change is no longer a distant or abstract concern. It is actively generating disasters and are having profound and immediate impact on people's lives. Floods, heat waves, droughts, storms are not just environmental events, but they are taking lives, destroying homes and livelihoods, displacing families, disrupting health and education systems, and pushing already vulnerable communities deeper into poverty. In Pakistan, we saw this firsthand, most dramatically, in the floods of 2010 and 2022, and again last year. These events overwhelm communities and institutions alike, and they stretch humanitarian systems to their limits, recurrent and compounding. Each shock lands before recovery from the last one is complete. The economic damage, as you also heard, is enormous. Lost infrastructure, lost productivity, shrinking fiscal space, and rising public debt. But beyond the headline numbers, the deeper issues are structural. Climate shocks are now reversing development gains, impacting communities into cycles of vulnerability and reshaping national development trajectories. In other words, climate change is transforming disasters from one-off emergencies into long-term developmental challenges. Third, our policy and institutional responses have not fully caught up with this reality. Disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation have largely emerged from different disciplines, different institutions, and different planning traditions. Disaster risk reduction has tended to focus on preparedness, response, and recovery, often operating on short time horizons and driven by emergency imperative. Adaptation, by contrast, has focused on long-term planning, resilience building, and climate-proofing development. Yet for communities on the ground, these are not separate challenges. A farmer facing repeated floods or droughts does not experience response, recovery, and adaptation as disconnected agendas. It is one continuum of risk. And when our systems remain fragmented across institutions, policies, planning horizons, and levels of government, the result is reduced effectiveness despite higher expenditures. Put simply, adaptation and disaster risk reduction need to come together, not just in theory, but in practice. And finally, fourth, this integration is critical not only for better outcomes on the ground, but also for financing. At present, too much climate-related finance is still reactive, mobilized after disasters strike, through emergency appeals and short-term instruments. Integrating adaptation and disaster risk reduction opens a door to more predictable, efficient, and scalable finance. It strengthens the case for investing upfront in risk reduction, for aligning humanitarian development and climate finance, and for moving from crisis-driven spending to resilience-oriented investment. Again, this is not just a technical issue, it is central to fiscal sustainability and national development plan. That brings us directly to the purpose of this session, synergies between adaptation and disaster risk reduction. If we accept that climate change is generating recurrent disasters, that these disasters are now structural development challenges, and that fragmented approaches are no longer fit for purpose, then the central question is not whether we respond or whether we adapt, but how we do both together, more efficiently and at scale. This session, therefore, will focus on 4 interconnected areas. First, policy coherence. How adaptation policies and disaster risk reduction strategies can be better aligned through integrated system-based approaches. Second, governance. How coordination can be strengthened across ministries, provinces, and institutions to reduce fragmentation and increase impact at scale. Third, implementation. How risk and plans are translated into practical, joined-up action at national, provincial, district, and community level. And finally, fourth, finance. How Pakistan and its partners can shift from funding reactive crisis-driven plans only towards investing in predictable, resilient-focused plans. Together, these issues go to the heart of how countries like Pakistan can confront a climate reality that is already with us, and how they can lead the way in building climate resilience in an era where time is clearly running out. Again, I'm very honored to introduce our 2 distinguished panelists, who are the leaders in the disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation sectors. Ms. Aisha Humera Chaudhry, she is a career civil servant of Pakistan Secretariat Group. She has senior leadership roles across ministries in the past, including Economic Affairs Division, Ministry of Food Security, Ministry of IT and Telecommunications, and now Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. She has had also international experience serving as economic counselor at Pakistan's mission to the World Trade Organization in Geneva. She holds advanced degrees from various universities, including Harvard and Geneva and London School of Economics. Mr. Mohammed Idrees Mahsud, also a senior Pakistani civil servant with experience in public policy, governance, and disaster risk management. Currently serving as member of DRR in NDMA, he is leading national DRR policy, anticipatory action, and provincial coordination. He has spearheaded major initiatives on multi-hazard risk assessment, disaster risk financing, climate change adaptation, and shift from reactive response to risk-informed resilience building. He also has various international and academic credentials, including diplomatic service in Vietnam, Laos, with a Master of Public Policy from University of Melbourne, also other degrees from University of Peshawar and National Schools of Public Policy, Lahore. Again, very excited to welcome these distinguished panelists as we start our conversation. My first question goes to Secretary Aisha. Pakistan has made significant progress on climate change, climate adaptation planning and implementation following the devastating floods of recent years, including the National Adaptation Plan of 2023, and more recently, the Flood Mitigation Plan for 2026 monsoon. Please share with us your assessment on the progress on advancing adaptation and
Thank you very much. As the previous session speakers have set the tone, that there are certain global challenges which has brought Pakistan in a situation where climate crisis is converting into a debt crisis for Pakistan. So adaptation policy is there since 2023, and the efforts that Pakistan is making, I can talk about it. But these climate challenges have forced us to choose between son and a daughter. DRR and adaptation are from the same parents, but we are forced to choose between the two. Why? Because, one event takes away 8 to 10% of GDP of Pakistan. So we are constantly struggling between our growth and development and the recovery response that we have to make. So this is the challenge in which we are spending on adaptation and trying to implement the adaptation policy. It obviously covers the nexus of water and agriculture, which is very much linked with food security. It is also looking at sea level rise, forestry, impact on health and education, and very important part of the policy is inclusion. As the minister also talked about including youth in our action and policies. So adaptation has more than 170 actions. And we are very actively engaged with all the provinces. Today, KP province is launching its district adaptation plan. So we are also working in rest of the provinces and we are helping them to go down to the district level and prepare their adaptation plan, keeping in view the challenge that they face, whether it's hill torrent, flash flood, drought, or heat wave, or gluff in GB. So these district adaptation plan is the main building block. It also includes the hazard mapping, which is important for DRR as well as for the adaptation. Under the flood resilience plan, which was approved in November by the Prime Minister, there are short, medium, and long-term interventions. And we regularly interact with the provinces and take stock of that. And Prime Minister is regularly taking stock. We at the ministry level engage with the provinces and the technical teams. So the institutional arrangements are in place. The level of seriousness at the top is commendable. I think Pakistan was among the top 30 countries who submitted their NDC in September when Prime Minister was there in the climate conference. Even EU NDC was submitted later on. So a country which is committed to reduce carbon emission and protect this planet obviously require resource mobilization and climate finance. So DRR was indicated in our NDC. Pakistan needs $139 billion by 2035 to fulfill our DRR need. And there are ample studies by the World Bank to indicate the adaptation needs for Pakistan. And in COP30, we made a very strong case for the tripling of adaptation financing. But it's really sad to see that there was not even a complete consensus that what is the baseline from which we are talking about tripling of the adaptation fund. So we cannot control global temperature, but obviously we have to protect our people. So adaptation is an area where Pakistan is very seriously working. Our green tagging also indicates our commitment to adaptation and mitigation. Under the flood resilience plan, we are working on improving zoning, floodplain management, and not just big and small dams, but there is a lot of focus on small ponds. Because this is one area which is a low-hanging fruit. And with the engagement of communities, we can really ensure that the excess water is available to them when there is not enough water for their livelihood and for their livestock. And at the same time, we are also working with the provinces that we need to convert this excess water to drought-prone area. So the water channels have to be there to ensure that all the water is not going into the sea and raising sea level. So that's where a lot of investment is required in the critical water infrastructure. And that is one of the priorities in the PSDP as well as annual development plan. Similarly, having infrastructure which is resilient to these calamities. So the schools and hospitals have to be resilient. So green building codes are there. We have different initiatives under adaptation to create resilience, not just in infrastructure, but in communities, in food security, in livelihood. And the governance structure, as I told you, are very clear. We have, even under the Climate Change Act, there is a council which is headed by the Prime Minister, and it has representation from all the chief ministers. So that is the apex forum through which decision making is made. And wherever we need consensus, we did that in when we were working on the carbon credit guideline. So that was the forum where we took all the concepts and created consensus, and then the carbon market became operational. So that is, maybe we can talk about climate finance later. So yeah.
Thank you, Secretary Aisha, for elaborating on some of the key examples on the progress made on advancing adaptation. And I took note of your point about having the same parents. I think that's really a key also to always remember. Member Mohammed Idrees Mahsud, next question. Pakistan has strengthened its disaster risk reduction and management architecture over the years, including intergovernmental coordination in support of preparedness, early warning, response, and recovery. How does the current NDMA strategy align with medium and long-term climate change adaptation objectives?
Thank you. You rightly pointed out that, and it was in fact after the unfortunate earthquake of 2005 that we brought in a comprehensive legal and institutional framework for disaster risk management. The core focus of all the architecture and the structure was to mitigate and reduce the impact of likely disasters, both geophysical and hydrometeorological or human-induced. So here I would like to, just inform you about our understanding. We don't see climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction as very much different thing. In simple terms, the climate change adaptation is actually disaster risk reduction, mostly actually disaster risk reduction against hydrometeorological hazards. While the scope of disaster risk reduction could be a little bit broader because it would also include actions and mitigation measures that are aimed at reducing vulnerabilities and, against geophysical hazards like earthquakes and landslides or tsunamis or things like that. But mostly, they are interlinked, and that is why precisely we and the Ministry of Climate Change are working very closely with each other. The Ministry of Climate Change is part of our APEX institutional structure, which is National Disaster Management Commission, headed by the Prime Minister, where the Ministry of Climate Change is sitting in there. We also have in the council, even the National Disaster Management Authority is part of, important deliberations and decision making. We have a National Disaster Risk Reduction Strategy 2025 to 2030. It's a living document. We also have a policy. We have National Disaster Management Plan that outlines specific interventions that are required to be undertaken and which are likely to have us more resilient as a nation and community. Now, our National Disaster Risk Reduction Strategy has specific goals and objectives. Among others, it includes strengthening of risk knowledge, and that is the basis of all decision making, adaptation, disaster risk reduction, preparedness. Now here we lack, and you were told by the Honorable Minister in the morning that a very good initiative with the Italian government of Green University that is likely to, we need to specifically know how climate change is likely to affect us, in what areas, to what extent, and whether there are opportunities also which we can tap, and what are the specific measures that are likely to reduce the impact of such hazards or impact. Now, we at the NDMA have been working since 2007 on different initiatives that included multi-hazard vulnerability risk assessments to understand where we are likely to be hit by specific hazards and how we can, then take decisions of reducing or mitigating the impact of such hazards. This also lays emphasis on the strategy lays emphasis on climate adaptive, risk sensitive, and inclusive development. So whatever has been done that needs to be corrected, but whatever is to be done needs to be risk sensitive, climate adaptive, and inclusive. And in that, our prime importance is towards building resilient infrastructure and community through ecosystem-based approach. Now, there are other interventions also, like modernizing our. Don't need to take. We don't need to have rescuers going into the middle of the river like in Swat. A drone can pick up 100 kg human body and can bring it to the safe area. So these interventions, and we didn't had any urban search and rescue team back in 2005. This Margala Tower was, the normal responders, the firefighters were doing that response. Now, alhamdulillah, we have over 9 urban search and rescue teams. We have one of our urban search and rescue teams is UNINSER. We have traveled a long way, but we need to catch up a lot. And and we also need to focus on sustainable investment and financing channels. And I'm happy to inform most of the audience that may not know that Pakistan is one of the few countries that has a specific dedicated national disaster risk management fund for investments in disasters. Our ministry is making a lot of efforts on attracting or getting the funding from GCF or other sources. While there are disappointments in there because the access issues are there, but we are continuously working. We understand that our standard disaster risk reduction measures, primarily funded through Pakistan public sector development program, development partners contributions, needs to take we need to implement that vigorously. But the shortest possible answer is anticipatory action against specific hazards, which we are working with the communities and with the responders, and even the WFP is one of the contributors to such efforts. So disaster risk reduction strategy and climate change adaptation, all these are very much linked, and contributing to both of them actually make us resilient.
Thank you again for also highlighting that connection and the linkage between the two. We now have a bit more time, so maybe 3 minutes each, the final questions. Secretary Aisha, please, having listened to Member Idrees, tell us about Pakistan's progress in terms of disaster risk reduction, particularly floods, and what are the ministry's priorities going forwards in terms of coordination, integration, adaptation, and financing for adaptation.
For the livelihood protection, water channels are being created and community awareness is created. So we work hand in hand with PMD, which is the Met Department, and NDMA to ensure that these early warning systems are working effectively. So this is one area where we coordinate with the disaster related institution. But on the other hand, we also work on preempting these incidents. For example, these Gulf incidents can be preempted by having a good research of the highly dangerous Gulfs and then creating timely drains so that water is regularly released and the Gulf incident does not happen. So these are some of the adaptation related measures which need to be taken in for a long period of time, so that in every Gulf season we can at least minimize the Gulf incident. So for these type of events, kind of a preemptive work, again, we collaborate not just with NDMA, provincial disaster management authorities, WAPDA, which has a glaciology center, and we also work with Karakoram University. There is another one in Gilgit, another university. So, and the development partners. So the approach, whether it's early warning or disaster recovery and response, or creating long-term resilience against those challenges in the form of adaptation, I think the key is coordination, uh, having correct policy in place, and then taking all the stakeholders together, and always ensure that there is an R&D component, because this challenge is such that we must keep on looking at the latest research. So we have a center called Global Climate Impact Study Center. Through them, we have created a lot of collaboration with not just national institutions but international institutions as well. So we are also preparing short, medium, and long-term climate impact research. And just also to highlight some, GLUF was just one project. World Food Program is doing another project, which is water recharge. Again, we are collaborating number of provincial institutions, all the irrigation departments who are at the front line when they are Federal Flood Commission, the organization which are at the front line when these catastrophes come. Similarly, SAFER is another adaptation project where we are very closely working with UNICEF and an EC Mode, which is a regional organization, to enhance adaptation capabilities of the community.
Thank you for really enriching us with those real examples, including on GLOB. And very much, I heard you on the research and development. I think Senator Sherry Rahman had also talked about the importance of data, but great to hear that there's also investment in the research and development area. Member Mohammed Idrees, final question, 3 minutes, please. Follow-up question-wise, where do you see the strongest synergies, now that you've been hearing and also talking about synergies, where is the strongest synergies emerging to achieve climate resilience for the most vulnerable communities?
Thank you. You know, there is a lot of scope and room for further integrating and synergizing the efforts. We have now, alhamdulillah, very strong institutional structure in the form of National Disaster Management Authority at federal level. Provincial disaster management authorities are fairly strong in all the provinces. They were not existing mostly during 2010 floods. Besides, NDMA was there, but except Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the others were not existing in 2010. We have district disaster management authorities, but here is a challenge that we face. And the district disaster management authorities, though, are a sort of committees, or the district administration leads that. But personally, I would like to see a dedicated department assisting the deputy commissioner or the district disaster management authority in championing disaster risk reduction and adaptation measures at ground at the district level. That would be a key for both the disaster risk management and climate adaptation at local level. They need to see which areas at the community level, which areas are vulnerable to what kind of hazards and what needs to be protected. For example, why should they build in 100-year, a 10-year return period flood area, any school or hospital, or near in the fault line areas, or even if they build that has to be compliant to the building code, that has to be resilient. and such measures needs to be taken. They need to have good sewerage and stormwater drain system. Just imagine that in 2020 we had a situation in Karachi, and only 300 millimeter rainfall in few hours created havoc. But with our emergency nature of development work that NDMA piloted, like we revamped 3 nallas, Korangi, Gujar, and Mahmudabad, and there are 48 other nallas or stormwater drains in Karachi. Only with these 3, we had 2 times in the past years similar kind of rainfall, but it withstood that, that kind of rainfall, and we didn't see much of problem like in 2010. So just imagine if the district disaster management authorities are capable of clearing their stormwater drains and all those things. Another thing, for example, school safety framework. We among Inclusive Pakistan, NDMA is one of the few in the region, maybe that has a dedicated cells of gender and community cells. We launched a massive school safety framework, and I see my former chairman NDMA, General Asghar Nawaz, who was the architect of this system, and now most of the schools have those mechanisms that know what to do in such calamity area time. In 2005, we lost 18,000 school children and teachers in schools. If those schools were resilient, they knew everything, we would have saved much of that human loss that we had. So institutional structure, if we have at district disaster management authority level, and we prepare our communities under communities-based disaster risk management initiatives that NDMA can only pilot in few areas. The main implementation level has to be the humanitarian community, the local organizations, the district disaster management authorities, and we can facilitate that. That would, be a decisive factor if we have communities engaged. Most of the communities won't even know what climate change adaptation is or what climate change phenomena. So we need to make them aware. We at the National Disaster Management Authority have a strong risk communication system now in place. We have National Institute of Disaster Management Authority, National Institute of Disaster Management Center of Excellence that is trying to create that critical human resource for taking on such.
Thank you. Very rich. And I understand the time is up. So really, I just wanted to thank both of our key panelists. We've heard a lot of great synergies happening already. We couldn't touch on all the areas, but I think elements of policy coherence, governance, implementation, financing, collaboration did come up. So I really commend, I think, all the great work that is being done. I think progress is there. I think I also do want to come back to the earlier I think remark by one, that Pakistan shouldn't be seen as a victim of climate change, but I think we have elements of great success stories and solutions emerging from Pakistan, so that Pakistan can become more leaders in confronting and addressing and managing climate change from local to global. With that, I really thank our two panelists, and I look forward to also engaging with them and others as the sessions go by. Thank you so much.